Love is in the air, and love is in the Zoom room. Tonight, I invite all of you to be my Valentine because I love you all for being here. And to those of you listening to the replay, I love you for listening in. Welcome to the FBOMB Global Flash Reading. My name is Francine Witte, and I'm here in New York City, stuck in the photo of a bookstore. This reading was started by the wonderful writer Paul Beckman, who hosted the FBOMB live in New York City and then moved it to Zoom and has graciously handed it over to the reins to me, and I thank him for that opportunity. We have a wonderful lineup of readers tonight. Feel free to use the chat to express your thoughts as we go down the list. The readers will be posting links to books and so on as we go through the evening. But for now, just sit back, relax, and get ready for some pretty awesome writing. I like to warm up the air by reading something, just to get you settled in, comfortable, all that. So this is called The Day is a Diamond. Light passing through to the infinite, my phone rings, tomorrow calling, tells me I am in a boat in a river and don't bother looking for land. Soon enough, tomorrow says, this will all make sense. This is no stranger than anything else tomorrow has promised. I see an island full of caves to disappear in and whoosh willow to lie under. I see a piece of sun in the sky. The hang of light in the air above the island doesn't make anything look faceted, carroted. I remind myself how a diamond is made, carbon to pressure to glitter. I remind myself that I should wait. The day is a ruby, color of a broken heart, color of a bloodshot eye, no sleep because I was a Valentine once. I waited for the phone to ring, to beep, to buzz, whatever it does, but it didn't. I waited some more and the waiting became an island where I sat under a blush of tree and hint of moon. I remind myself of the red in my blood, color of a ruby stone, how it gives me life, gives me tomorrow, how sometimes tomorrow is a red lip pout, all memory and promise, and none of it true. I remind myself that I shouldn't wait. The day is a sapphire, blue cool of another chance. Each morning, each tomorrow is, okay, let's try again. It is plump berry in my mother's china. How skin fragile this tiny bowl is. I could break it like a bone. I pour my coffee into a teacup. Though my mother always said it was wrong. How wrong is it to tell a teacup it's wrong, to tell it that it's only made for tea? I remind myself that I am a blue, unclouded sky, and I will fill myself today with birds and sweet lilac and the sounds from a distant carousel. I remind myself it's time to begin. The day is an emerald, green meadows everywhere. I remember play and parks and embroidery cards in Cheryl's backyard. Her father by the barbecue, waving away the smoke that rose up around him like a cobra. The day is new and smells of mint and all the things tomorrow promised us yesterday. I think of my friends from when I was small and sprout, how we had a million tomorrows ahead of us. We didn't think about when Cheryl's father died sudden and lung heavy, or when Cheryl and I went our separate ways, how life turns into branches and everyone you ever meet goes off on a different one. I remind myself, this is the way life is. I remind myself to take another breath. Thank you. So let us begin with our first reader, who is helping me out tonight with technical aspect of this whole thing, keeping us safe. Andrea Marcusa. Andrea Marcusa's writings have appeared in the Gettysburg Review, Moon City Review, River Teeth, Citron Review, and others. She's received recognition in a range of competitions, including Smokelong, Best Microfiction Cleaver, Raleigh Review, Southampton Review, and is the author of the chapbook, What We Live With Now, Bottle Cap Press, which is awesome. I just read it. She's a member of the faculty of the Writers Studio in New York City. Andrea Marcusa.
Thank you, Francine. And it's really great to be here. And I have to say, this is an awesome lineup. And I've actually never gone first. So bear with me. Um, I spent a lot of time today trying to figure out what to read because I want to read from my new chapbook, which of course you can barely see because I'm gonna hold on, let me just get rid of this. I'm sorry, but this is for my background. Well, anyway, I'll show it to you later. But it's called What We Now Live With, and it's just came out at the end of the year with Bottle Cap Press. And I decided that, today is Valentine's Day, and maybe I should find some things about love, but, love is a lot of different things. So I thought I would just take a look at a couple of different versions of love. So the first one I'm going to read is Randy, and this actually appeared in Francine's magazine, and I'm having a blank on the name of your magazine, but
Flesh Boulevard?
Flesh Boulevard.
Yeah.
And it's called Randy. We were new parents, smitten in love with everything about our children. We loved their leaps into the YMCA pool. We loved their shrieks as clowns twisted balloons into animals, the way they called our name. We loved their friend Randy, tearing down sidewalks, beaming, the tow-headed wonder in a red baseball cap, his parents racing to catch him. We loved his mom's moxie, his dad's wry humor. The moment we met, we knew we'd be friends. We don't know why now, but back then we knew things. We were launching, building, stepping into our lives. Side by side, we pushed our boys on playground swings, watching them glow, and Randy always yelled, "Faster, faster." We huddled on benches, sharing animal crackers and raisins, dreaming out loud about who our kids would one day be. So many days spent together, year after year. On crowded sidewalks, we recognized Randy on his dad's shoulders, reaching to flick every storefront awning, could tell his mom's crisp voice on the phone by her second word. We knew each other the way you only know families when your kids are young and their bedroom doors are open and whole days are spent in each other's kitchens. Now it's a blur except for how we felt. We don't know, remember when Randy's family moved downtown and began drifting away. Financial reasons, we think. We didn't want to pry and they didn't offer. We tried to stay in touch, but things moved so fast. There were always new teachers and school pals and coaches crowding our children's lives. We called less and less, and so did they, until we didn't call at all. Once we ran into Randy's mother. Our kids were then in high school, promising we'd meet, but we never did anything about it. When our boys left for college, we moved on to other things. We forgot about Randy, his parents, that time in our lives, until the day we learned that Randy had left everyone. There was an email, a Facebook post, the story in a college paper. We phoned, emailed, and Googled to learn why, but found little. Hometown Chicago, philosophy major, girlfriend Liz. Who was this Randy? Ours sipped his mom's tea at their butcher block table and skipped down brownstone steps. We couldn't stop thinking about him, his empty bedroom, his snow globes, the glazed trivet, with his toe print because he pulled off his socks and pressed his foot instead of his hand into the clay. We thought of Randy as soon as we woke up and before we fell asleep. A hurt rose from deep inside us. It rose from a still and quiet place where parents' love always lives, the place where we could still feel that lift when we first watched our children run to us beaming, the place that once gave us the will to silence our yells so we wouldn't harm them, the place where our kids' voices still sharp, happily sing, the place where there is no room for the notion of our children ever leaving us. Someone said it must have been depression, pressure, but we needed to know for sure and exactly how he did it. We hated ourselves for this, but couldn't help it. We pictured the boy with blonde bangs and gunmetal eyes and wondered if there had been signs, a latent flaw, hiccuping synapses, a disturbing tic, romance in crisis. We wanted to erect a thick wall of facts between us and our sorrow, reasons why they weren't like us after all, why it couldn't happen to us, our children, our families. But there were none. This just happened, someone said, the inexplicable commingling of fluctuating brain chemistry and opportunity. Before entering the church's darkness, its minor key, and the downpour of tears, we hugged our tall sons in dark suits, their solid arms and shoulders tense with life. Inside, our eyes traveled over hundreds of heads until we spotted Randy's parents, bowed over, postures caved in, and we looked down at stone. Then it was over. The church doors opened to May skies, and we walked home in silence, past the school, past the Y, and then came to the old playground, now flooded in midday light. There, we remembered one time, one afternoon. The conversation had paused, and we looked up to see our little boys hugging at the top of the slide. We didn't say, watch out, be careful. We simply beheld something huge as sun spilled on Randy's face. Call it the life force, God's hand, right there in front of us in this little boy's utter bliss, jubilant laugh, such absolute wonderment before he took that step and slid. Okay, I have another really depressing story about kids dying, but I think I might skip it. So I'm going to read Opportunity Meets Preparation. Why are you throwing out the Valium? They're expired. I recovered the yellow pharmacy vial from the garbage. Inside, the pills look perfectly pink and round. Only the bottle looks cloudy and aged. They're only 4 years old. You keep aspirin longer. That's different. My husband likes to be accurate, knows where he can cut corners and where he cannot. I clean off the outside of the bottle with a Clorox wipe. October 2018, the world's last good year. I push down and turn the tough white childproof cap. A pile of pink discs rests there, ready for whatever comes its way, degraded slightly with age, like me. The older I get, the more I realize that it's important to be prepared. These rescue Valiums will join my arsenal of young and old Xanax, Neurontin, one lone Vicodin, little neutralizing discs, pink, white, blue, poised to discharge their tonic, carpet bomb the mind, limbs, dull all that hurts, head to toe, in their own outdated, degraded, past shelf date way. At my age, it's important to find pick-me-ups, panaceas from the dark threat that's always circling there on the edges. I like to be ready for I'm not sure what. You see, even after all these years of living and planning for all manner of catastrophe, I never realize it when disaster first hits me. And then the last one I'm going to read is very short. It's called A Sparrow Will Listen. A sparrow will cock its head and stare at you with thoughtful eyes as you go on about the stove repair guy with its iPad, firm ass, high billing rate and attitude, or the city's new plan to reroute the garbage trucks so they thunder under your bedroom window at 3 a.m., or the high price of toilet paper. A sparrow will take it all in, hop to a lower branch, lift a wing to pick at its underside while considering your words. Nearby, spring erupts with tulips grinning and daffodils cavorting and trees scattering soft green florets that carpet the park's walkways. A sparrow will ignore this splendor and keep its attention on you as you tell it about the velvet-eyed young man you once sat beside in a cafe on a day just like this one. The feel of his hand on your waist, his scent of new earth and lemongrass. A sparrow might stop picking to look at you. He'll cock his head again to catch every nuance of your story. He'll watch you fumble with the zipper on your jacket and then fish for the last crumbs from your crackers that you just finished. You hold out your hand with your open palm and tell the sparrow that the velvet-eyed man was 30 years ago, another lifetime. A sparrow will stare at you like it understands and then flutter towards you, hovering above your hand until it wisps some crumbs away, stunning you into the present and a wonderment of how the tiny beak eagerly nibbled the crackers, tickling your palm before flying off. So amazing, you say to no one in particular, because you can still feel the sparrow's beak on your skin, its life touching yours, and you carry this feeling with you all the way back home amid a chorus of singing birds. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrea Marcusa. That was really just so beautiful and poignant and achingly gorgeous. And you can see some of the really nice comments in the chat. One of my favorite lines was, "A hurt rose deep from inside us, from deep inside us." Oh, I just love that. Thank you for being here with us tonight, Andrea Marcusa. And where can we get your chapbook, by the way?
I put it in the chat. Mm-hmm. You can either order it at Bottle Cap Press, which could take some time.
Okay.
Or if you contact me at Andrea.Marcusa, Andrea, it's there. Okay. Andrea.Marcusa@gmail.com. I can send you one and you can just pay me through PayPal. Okay.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. Our next reader, Gary Fincke. Gary Fincke publishes in 3 genres: fiction, poetry, and nonfiction, including books that have won the Flannery O'Connor Prize for Short Fiction, the Elixir Press Prize for Fiction, the Robert C. Jones Prize for Creative Nonfiction, and prize-winning poetry collections from Ohio State, Arkansas, Michigan State, and Jack Hart Press. His next book will be the poetry collection For Now We Have Been Spared, to be published March 25th by Slant Books. Gary Fincke.
Thanks, Francine. I'm going to read two short pieces from the history of the baker's dozen. I hold it up, try to hold it up, so I show off my daughter's artwork. She's done about a half a dozen covers for me over the years. That's what she does. I don't have a very good voice tonight, so of course, if I'm going to read, sure enough, it's like gives you a sore throat. Anyway, I'm going to read these two. The first one is a kind of anti-Valentine story called Tapeworm, a parable. After he says that her latest diet has failed, after a morning of cajoling and an afternoon of his sweetest talk, after her reluctance at twilight, he tells her this one is foolproof. After darkness sets in, her resistance wavering ever so slightly, he says, never again will you need a new one. After he swears this will be the greatest gift he could give her, after she travels with him to Mexico on what he calls a working vacation, after she accepts the nausea that surrounds her and jabbers in her ears while she swallows the advertised meal of infected beef. After this diet at last has entered her, he kisses her, but not, she notices, upon the lips. When they are about to leave, no one has to warn, say nothing to anyone. When she sees another well-dressed couple pass them, she is grateful for dark glasses. When they step outside, she adjusts her wide-brimmed hat, tugging it ever so slightly lower. Now the heat and swirling dust announce what feels to her like cartel weather. Already she imagines the guaranteed worm devouring her. She remembers health class, the filthy boy in front of her who sucked his fat fingers after his greasy lunch. Aftertaste flies home with her. The future, it promises, is 2 pounds lost per week while you eat the food you love. He reminds her that trust is what's necessary, that a miscarried worm is the exception. When her body thins and lightens, envy will examine her full plates. Jealousy will notice that she doesn't excuse herself from the table. Rage may even drum its fingers or clench its fists throughout the unshakable alibis of dessert, after dinner drinks, and more than an hour of conversation. For certain, he says, the worm will keep its secret. What better arrangement could it wish for, regularly fed and undisturbed? She wonders how many weeks it will take for him to be pleased, how many after that until he worships her. She has nothing to do now but wait. So there is time for her to study, to learn that the segments of her worm are conjoined to absorb her through their skin, that it will fatten and lengthen from its greed for her without relying upon an insistent mouth. For 2 months, he does nothing but watch her, saying that he is waiting for perfection. For another month, the same, promising and promising like an evangelist. When she is dizzy, he says, trust. When she is nauseous, he says, faith. She begins to dream him thin and frail and gasping. She studies cleansing. Because she cannot announce by using bottled remedies, she learns that flushing the worm requires papaya seeds in warm water and honey. She hydrates and repeats until one promise at last comes true. For 3 days, her weight is steady. On the 4th morning, she has edged up 3 ounces. He hovers over her lunch. He stares at her dinner. The following morning, she begins to leave him pound by pound. Anybody know the Andre Debus story, the fat girl? I don't know if anybody read Andre Debus, the father, not the son, Andre the third. Anyway, eventually she hides candy bars and all sorts of things. The second story, I guess it's a kind of awkward Valentine as well. It's called The Bedroom Clowns. Without asking him, the boy's mother has his room redecorated. The clown wallpaper fills 2 walls after his mother drives him home from school. The cars and motorcycles that seemed to drive right at him when he entered the room or lay in bed vanished. Everybody loves clowns, she says. It was time for a change, and the man who hung it was happy for the work. The boy decides that all the clowns on his new wallpaper are falling. He stares, counting and recounting how often each of the clowns is repeated. 3 clowns are brilliant in solid colors, yellow, red, and orange. As if dressed in school colors, 4 are two-toned. 3 are in stripes whose spirals make them appear to spin. All of their suits are baggy, each of them uselessly ballooned, their enormous shoes spread like helpless sails. Just barely, the boy shudders, but his mother is worrying about his silence. Don't they all look happy, she says. The clown's expressions are painted sunny and gleeful, but each one the boy notices wears the same white foundation of deletion. They look silly, he finally says. Good, his mother says, relieved. That's their job. The evening passes without the boy returning the grins of the 10 clowns. What he begins to believe is that those that are splayed sideways are scudding across what appears to be a cloudless, wind-swept sky, that some who seem to be seated on nothing are plummeting from an unseen plane. Worse are the twisted, head-first clowns, their bright smiles lasting all the way to the carpet where their legs still pedal air as he feels the floor fall out from under him. Worst of all, he thinks before sleep, are the arms extended clowns who are grinning as they concentrate on maintaining impossible flight. From behind them, inside the wall, the boy hears the scratching that accompanies their disguised fright. In the morning, like she has since the accident, his mother drives him to school using a road that adds 2 miles to the trip. The scenic road, she calls it, as if the scenery had begun to matter now that he was in 2nd grade. The boy, as he does each day, silently promises to ride his new bike on the old road as soon as he dares to disobey his mother's sidewalks only. That afternoon, nearly finished with the scenic road home, the boy asks his mother about sky, where it begins. At the far edge of everything, she tells him, like heaven, where clear weather is always expected and no one you love ever leaves. The clowns, then, must fall from above the sun, he decides. But all day he has been thinking that they are being carried up by a violent wind. When he returns to his room, he closes the door and presses the lock. The clowns are still tumbling, but the boy this time believes they are ascending, their half-seen bodies near the ceiling proof. When, standing in his father's floppy shoes, he holds his smile exactly like theirs, he feels he might lift and rise if he doesn't cry, that he would learn where his father has gone if he too could vanish. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gary Fincke. Such wordsmithery there. Really, like this, the way you wrought your language, like your phrasing is beautiful. I especially love the after repetition in the first piece. Really beautiful, beautiful stuff. Thank you so much, Gary, for being here with us. And we look forward to hearing about your book, and we following you to see where we can get that. Oh, okay. Put it in the chat if you have that information.
Yeah, I put it at the beginning of the chat.
Okay.
The information.
Feel free to put it in again. Well, thank you so much for being here, Gary Fincke. So what I like to do basically is I like to do my little Ed Sullivan moment here, to thank the people that aren't reading for being here. Especially it's Valentine's Day. I mean, you could be going out on the town, dancing on a table, I don't know, whatever, or just watching TV, watching the news. You don't want to do that though. So I'd like to just give a shout out to Elon Barnhammer, Claudia Montpere. These are all like flash fiction luminaries. Jackie Doyle, Luella Lester, Alyssa Field, Jessica Klimisch, Mario Eliberto, and I think Zvi was trying to get in here, Zvi Sessling, he might be here. And also to Carol Sessler, my beautiful cousin. My aunt turned 100, my Aunt Miriam, who's usually here, she turned 100 last month, so it was beautiful, just beautiful, and just a beautiful person. Jen Wyrelt Edson, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, Jen. Jennifer Daddio and Colleen Randall, and if I missed you, I apologize. Thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it. Okay, next We're going to hear from Dawn Tasaka Steffler, and you can correct me if I mispronounce that, Dawn. She's a writer from Hawaii. I learned to say that, Hawaii, from Kim Rogers, who currently lives in San Francisco Bay Area. She was a Smoke Long Emerging Writer Fellow, winner of the Bath Flash Fiction Award, and selected for the Wiggly Top 50 long list. Her stories appear in Sopo Pojo, Pithead Chapel, Flash Frog, Fractured Lit, Atlas and Alice, In Short Journal, and is forthcoming in Moon City Review. So she's doing pretty good for herself, okay? She's working on a collection of flash-length prose that explores the challenges and joys of parenting queer kids. Find her online at Dawn Tassaker.Steffler.com and on X Blue Sky and Instagram at Dawn Steffler. Dawn Tasaka Steffler.
Thank you so much for inviting me to read. And I have my first piece is CNF, and it was published recently in Short Journal. And this is kind of from my collection, Bra Shopping. It's your 23rd birthday, and I suggest a girls' lunch at the fancy mall, followed by an afternoon of shopping. We hug when you arrive, and I gush over your loose, beachy waves, as gorgeous as any white girl on TikTok. You reward me with a bashful smile. Once we're seated, you tell me how classes are going, and your hands play with the silverware. You've painted your nails a blue that's almost black, and the polish is chipped and growing out at the cuticles. The server approaches with our cocktails. Enjoy your lunch, ladies, she says, and your brows arch with pleasure. Over the rim of your glass, you wink. See? You want to be a woman so badly. After lunch, we roam the mall. The rarefied air smells of perfume, pressed powder, and shoe leather. While going through the racks at Anthropology, you sidle up close so our purses touch, and you ask in a low voice if I can help you buy a bra. I know exactly where to take you. My mother took me to Nordstrom for my first bra, and I had taken your sister. The diffused light of the dressing room, the gentle hands of the sales lady as the tape measure barely skims the body, the soft knock on the dressing room door when she delivers a heap of lace and cotton, you would probably think you'd died and gone to heaven. But when we get off the escalator, I'm confronted with reality. Too few sales ladies handling too many customers, and everyone is middle-aged and white. No one here will want to fit you. So I pivot. I guesstimate your size, select some pretty bras, and lead you to the fitting room. Thankfully, you don't see the sales lady's face, perplexed at first, and then disapproving when I'm the one taking a seat on the sofa and you're the one entering the dressing room. You don't see her freeze and stare at your closed door. I lean back and cross my arms. When the sales lady turns around, I raise my eyebrows and tilt my head at her. Do you have a problem with my daughter? 2 weeks ago, while I was washing dishes, you approached me, your anxiety high. Do you think when people see me, they see a woman? And you lengthened your neck, pulled your shoulders back, and turned your chin this way and that. I tried to defocus my eyes to see only the features, not the face, but I couldn't not see the toddler, little boy, teenager, young man I've known my whole life. And you said, "It's okay, Mom. I understand." While I wait, I pop a piece of gum, and the bright mint swirls in my sinuses, clearing out the last of the heavy olives and garlic we had at lunch. I'm suddenly exhausted and feeling sorry for how I behaved with the sales lady, who probably doesn't earn much over minimum wage. I close my eyes and lean my head back against the wall. I know this isn't my fight. But you're only becoming more sensitive, more soft-spoken. And this world likes to break fragile things. In the background, I hear the sales lady knocking on doors and checking on her customers. I notice she doesn't knock on yours. I'm about to text you to see what's taking so long when you emerge from the room with a disappointed shrug. and leave the ill-fitting bras behind. And I'm going to read one more. This story was published in Fractured Lit. Mom gets me a dog for my 9th birthday because she says all kids should have a dog. But I didn't ask for a dog. I asked for Grand Theft Auto. Mom says, there are things in that game that are not age appropriate. And I say, like killing hookers after you pay them so you can get your money back? She crosses her arms and looks at me, her forehead wrinkling. But I shrug and say, that stuff's all on YouTube. Whistle is a lab pit mix. I named him that because his nose whistles when he sleeps. The whistling used to keep me up, but I'm used to it now, just like I'm used to sleeping all scrunched up because he takes up the whole bottom half of my bed. Also, he smells sour, like mustard. Mom says he smells like that because he needs a bath, and it's my job to bathe him because he's my dog. Also, feeding him, picking up his poop, and walking him when I get home from school. I remind her, I didn't ask for a dog. I don't even like dogs. And she says, you'll be sorry when he's gone. And I say, I know, you say the exact same thing about yourself. For my 10th birthday, Dad gives me GTA when Mom isn't looking. I know what he's doing. Doesn't make up for everything, but it helps. I can only play when Mom's at work. So every day when I get home from school, I put Whistle in the backyard and say, I'm going to play for 1 hour tops. Then we'll go for a walk, okay? But every day, I lose track of time. Mom's driving like a lunatic. She says we're going to drop Whistle off on some country road so he can be nice and free. Because this morning she discovered Whistle dug up all her plants and chewed holes in her hose. Then she found GTA in my underwear jar, and now she's saying this is all Dad's fault. I hate it when she gets like this, itching to teach someone a lesson. So, who's the lesson for today? Herself for promising the shelter people that Whistle would be our forever dog? I pretend to fall asleep so she can't talk to me, but I actually fall asleep and I wake up when the back door slams. Then the driver's door slams and she's next to me, both hands on the wheel. I don't look at her, but I do look at Whistle in the side mirror, sitting attentively, head cocked to the side like a dummy. And she says, hopefully some nice person who loves dogs finds him. And she starts the engine. The tires crackle as we go from the dirt shoulder to the road. And honestly, I'm shocked. I watch Whistle go from a sit to a stand, and my insides fizz like a dropped Coke. Then she says, hopefully he doesn't starve in the woods or get hit by a car. I know what she's doing, but I don't say. And Whistle gets smaller and smaller in the window, the mirror, until I can't see him anymore. I imagine the upside for him. No more tiny backyard. He has space now. He can chase all the squirrels he wants. And I imagine the upside for me. No more dumping a pooper scooper full of dog shit into the super stinky poop trash can. No more waking up with a stiff neck. No more closing the kitchen door on his big brown eyes. But the longer she drives, the more I panic that when we turn around and go back to that spot, because it's inconceivable not going back, that Whistle won't be there. Maybe some stranger drives by and lures him into their car, or he sees a squirrel and runs into the woods, or he wanders onto the road, even though I've taught him to stay on the sidewalk. But there are no sidewalks here. I'm feeling carsick. I no longer care if Mom thinks she's teaching me a lesson. I just want Whistle safe in our back seat again. I say, Mom, turn around. Of course, she pretends not to hear, so I say it again, louder this time. Turn around, please. It takes a second, but I can feel her foot come off the gas pedal. Thank you very much.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Dawn. What exquisite attention to detail in those stories, really. Just for example, he smells soured like mustard, what a beautiful detail that is. Thank you for being here with us, Dawn. And this is Dawn's first reading with the FBOMB, so that was wonderful, really wonderful. Look at all the good comments you got in the chat. Thank you for being here, Dawn Tasaka Steffler. Did I say that right?
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Dawn. Okay, next we're going to hear from Jeff Harvey. Jeff Harvey has work published in Moon Park Review, Ghost Parachute, 5 South Lit, Bending Genres, the meta worker 10 by 10 Flash, who is Zvi Cecily, who just came in a little bit a while ago. Welcome, Zvi. McQueen's Quinterly, and in numerous other lit mags. He's been longlisted for Wigleaf's Top 50 and nominated for Best Microfiction 2025. Jeff is the author of Life Would Be Perfect If, Bottle Cap Press 2024. Jeff Harvey.
Hi, thank you, Francine, for inviting me. My first story is Animals Are Forever. While waiting for the light to change, Henry glanced at his cell and deleted yet another cat gift from a do-gooder friend. He preferred walking ever since a car crash took Derek's life. Tucked between Big Guy Tattoo Parlor and Hank's Shoes and Shirts was a block-shaped building with an advertisement in the window for an animal artist. Henry always loved sketching animals, and Derek had wanted him to focus more on his art. They had even discussed opening an animal-themed business, maybe something with pigs. The nose-pinching odor of rancid pickles met Henry as he entered the studio. Clumps of feathers and lots of rusty tools covered a workbench. Bottles of yellowing chemicals lined the shelves above the sink. From the back emerged a man with a pencil-thin mustache. Hi, I'm Carle. Welcome to Animals Are Forever. I saw your ad in the window. Are you a taxidermist? A dying art, some might say, but the millennials have discovered it and there's been a rebirth. Let me show you a few pieces. Henry knew he could never work in this environment. There was just too much death. This is Andy, a turtle that Chelsea and Tyler had for 5 years. I think I've captured her essence. Carle continued to guide Henry through his studio, showing him several works in progress along with the materials he used. I'm looking for someone who loves animals and wants to learn the art of taxidermy. Henry said, well, I'm just not sure about that. I think you have what it takes. I can tell you're creative from the way you dress. The bell on the door jingled, and Carle and Henry turned to see a young man holding a paper bag. We only had Stella for 8 years, and we loved the work you did with our friends Rabbit Montero. Inside the bag was a rainbow lorikeet. This will be an exciting challenge. Carle wrapped Stella in the bag and placed her in a refrigerator. The young man left the studio and Henry sidled towards the door. Are you afraid of something? Perhaps your passion, Carle asked. Henry looked around the studio and focused on twin chihuahuas nodding to each other as if they were meeting for the first time. I think the lorikeet will look natural, perched on a limb of an eucalyptus tree. Carle picked up a sketch pad and pencil. Let's get started. And my next one is, This Land is Your Land. The two oldest were greyhounds, and they sprinted across the land, scouring for roadkill to sell to Old Man Barton. The youngest was a bulldog and scored all the touchdowns. The lone girl cleaned houses for $3 a day and never finished elementary school. I stayed inside and entertained my mom since she didn't get out of bed anymore due to her lungs. She liked hearing my stories about me winning an avocado green kitchen for her on Let's Make a Deal, or finding a way to conceal the black cavity that damaged my left canine. Liquid paper only worked for 2 days. The old man arrived late and didn't like the canned foods I'd warmed up for him and the bulldog. for him and the bulldog, except for the SpaghettiOs, which smelled like potted meat. After the lone girl washed our dishes, she went to the bedroom we shared. The greyhound slept on the back porch. Like every night, the old man made me sing, "This land is your land," while wearing the dead one's military uniform before the 10 o'clock news, and then I got to go to bed. And next is Hollow. Another day of online shopping, and I pop into Gilbert the Butcher and order ground beef to make a burger for Phil, even though he moved out last year. While I'm looking over the selection, Gilbert drops a pig carcass on the countertop. He slices it open with a handheld saw, and the organs look like an image from a textbook, perfectly intact. Gilbert's thick muscles and freshly shaved head pull me around the counter to stand next to him. His turned-up nose exposing several hairs no longer puts me off, and I push my hand inside the pig's stomach. The intestines feel firmer than I expected and warmer. Dripping in sweat, Gilbert glistens and casts a pungent smell in my direction. He must have had some beach time. His arms are golden and his cheeks rosy. I ask him if he had gone recently, and he grunts, "Not likely." A woman announces over the intercom they're out of ground beef, and Gilbert looks at me and smacks his lips. "Anything else?" All his teeth are missing. He butchers another pig, and I can't wait to touch the heart. And then I've got one more, which is a short one, and it's kind of a Valentine story. It's called Natural Beauty. My Labradoodle, Gavin Newsom, with his curly hair and knowing eyes, chills on the front porch, nodding his head and blowing air kisses to those he's crushing on. My neighbor asks that I keep Gavin inside while he walks his Airedale because she loses her shit whenever her eyes meet Gavin's. Oklahoma relatives visit to bask on the beach. My sister says, "Gavin reminds me of California with its natural beauty, unique food, and self-righteousness." Gavin buries her bikini top under a pink bougainvillea. Later, he goes on his evening jog and brings home a Maltese for kombucha and Netflix. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Your really wonderful, quirky voice there is wonderful.
Thank you.
And I'm looking at your bio, and you didn't mention gooseberry pie.
Oh,
Which,
oversight.
yeah, well,
Gooseberry Pie Lit magazine.
yeah,
Send us one.
you have single-handedly injected life back into the six-sentence story. I'm telling you, it's just an exciting form. It just it's good. Like I've used it a couple of times in my prompt workshops, like the six-sentence story. It's just a perfect shape for a micro. And so, if you haven't had a chance to check out Jeff's gooseberry pie, it's wonderful. It's just a wonderful collection of these perfect little six-sentence stories. Some of them have a sentence that's a paragraph long, so
Yeah.
it's like actually six paragraphs, and some of them are a paragraph long. So, but it's wonderful. And thank you so much for being here, Jeff.
Thank you.
Jeff Harvey. Thank you. Okay, next we're going to hear from Christine H. Chen, who was born in Hong Kong and grew up in Madagascar before coming to the U.S. as a college student to study chemistry. Her fiction has appeared in Smoke Alone Quarterly, Ghost Parachute, Time and Space magazine, SoFlo Pojo, and other journals. Her work has been anthologized in Best Microfiction, Best Small Fictions, and elsewhere. You can read her stories at ChristineHChen.com. Christine H. Chen.
Well, thank you, Francine. Thank you so much for the invitation. And I've been loving all the stories that's been read. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. And tonight I'm going to read a micro story and maybe one or two drabbles. The first story is dedicated to my father. It was published in Smoke Long last December. And the title is I see you. Abba says he sees particles drifting, flying everywhere, rains of dust, he says, speckles that land on the back of his hands. See, he tells me, even though he's blind. He says, dust balls into blobs that float in his line of vision. He scrambles to follow them, points his fingers at the air. See, he says, for me to get a glimpse of the invisible clouds. And I push away the chair that stands in his way for fear he'll trip and fall. He braces himself for the flood of dust falling on his head in the garden where our clothes are drying. See how the dust has covered the bed sheets, and he paints swirls of dust with his palms in a floral pattern. See what I'm saying, he says, and tells me to shake the drying sheet, the two of us holding two corners of the bed sheet. Shake, shake, shake until sunset. Dust never sleeps, he says, and he wears a cardboard box on his head when he goes to bed. See, he says to Amma, who's livid and calls him crazy. See how dust collects in his ear, in his nose, how dust is trapped between the closet hinges, how he's packaged everything he wears in plastic bags. And finally, I touch his arm with the tip of my fingers, like dust settling on him, and I tell him, I see what you see, Abba. And now switching gear to a light-hearted story, Valentine theme, but maybe anti-Valentine. This is a drabble titled Her Name, and was published in Friday Flash Fiction. They agreed to go their separate ways amicably. She sold her glass dining table, their king-size bed, the guest towels. He boxed his collection of dice, video games, and comic books. They promised to stay friends, even if they dated other people. They hugged and cried. Wait, what about this? She said, pointing to her name he tattooed on his chest. I'd like it back. It's my name. It's my tattoo. She lunged. He kicked her in the gut. She squinted in pain and pulled her penknife. The police found them fighting, naked under the sky, shreds of clothing everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christine. That was such lively prose, and you read it beautifully.
Thank you.
I believe this is your first time on FBOMB. Am I correct about that? So welcome. We have a lot of newbies tonight, so it's very exciting. Christine H. Chen, thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to hear from Jeff Friedman. Jeff Friedman's 11th book, Broken Signals, was published by Bamboo Dart Press in August 2024. Friedman's poems and mini-stories have appeared in American Poetry Review, Poetry, Poetry International, New England Review, Dreaming Awake, New Contemporary Prose Poetry from the United States, Australia, and the United Kingdom, Smokeworm Quarterly, Flash Fiction Funny, Flash Nonfiction Funny, Smokeworm Quarterly 110-word story, Contemporary Surrealist and Magical Realist Anthology. 101 Jewish Poems for the Third Millennium, Best Microfiction 2021, 22, 23, and 24, and the New Republic. He has received an NEA Literature Translation Fellowship, 2 individual artist grants from the New Hampshire Arts Council, and numerous other awards, and you're about to hear why. Chef Friedman.
Thank you so much, Francine, for that introduction and for inviting me to read again at FBOMB. I always really like reading here. When you were saying that, I was sort of thinking to myself, flash nonfiction funny or flash non-funny fiction. I keep mispronouncing it every time I say it myself. But I'm going to start out with a piece that I have a Fitbit, so I'm timing myself. when it gets to a certain point, like it starts vibrating on my wrist. So I kind of like that feel. Okay, I'm going to start out with a piece called Sleepwalking, which is in Best Micro 2025 and appeared originally in Wiggly. My lover sleepwalks after midnight, leaving a trail of open doors behind her. If I clasp her arm to bring her back, she stops momentarily to lift my hand off and continues on as if I had never touched her. She is yet to fall down steps or stumble on the sidewalk. She parts the night as if wading through shallow water. When a car comes, she waits on the corner. Sometimes I walk beside her to see the brightness of her face, as if the moon is lighting it. Where are we going? I ask. I'll know when we get there, she answers, but she's not awake. And sometimes I follow her to see if she will wait for me, but she just keeps going, no matter how far I fall behind. At such times, I hurry to catch up, fearing that a tree might reach for her with its long limbs, or a dark bird might snatch her with its beak, or the chunks of a dying star might crash down on her. But nothing like that happens. Instead, she stops and gathers the wind in her mouth, blowing into the darkness until it is even darker. Then she follows the shadows through the open doors, and I close them behind her. The next piece I'm going to read is, read it from the book, is a piece called Chopsticks, and it's about memory. I've been writing a lot of pieces that explore memory lately. So, Chopsticks. How he loved remembering that she had been in love with him, kissing him suddenly while they sat at the piano, playing chopsticks together. She didn't remember that, kissing him or being in love. I would never have played chopsticks or any other song with you. I never learned to play the piano, she said. He took her hands in his and looked into her eyes. We were lovers, he said. I just met you, she answered. He led her to the piano and helped her sit down. We've been married a long time, he said, taking the spot next to her. She closed her eyes, thinking about what he had just told her. But when she thought about lying down in the bedroom, she couldn't picture him beside her. When she thought about the living room, he was not in it. Nor was he with her when she walked the neighborhood, stopping to admire the purple flowers and the burning bushes. Nor could she place him in the garden. Nor could she feel his lips kissing her tenderly on the cheek. As he began to play chopsticks, her hand moved up and down too, but didn't touch the keys. Uh, thank you. I'm going to read. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to say that. I'm going to read. I'm lightening up here. I'm lightening up, just like Christine. I'm making a quick shift to something lighter. Okay. There's a reference in this piece, which is titled "During Sex," to Khaleesi, the mother of dragons in Game of Thrones, and also the word Dracarys, which is a word she uses whenever she wants her dragons to torture enemies. So that comes toward the end. I just thought I'd preface that. During sex, Odalise, her eyes closed, called me Brad, meaning Brad Pitt. Since Brad Pitt has long, dirty blonde hair and is layered with all kinds of muscle, and since I'm on the flabby side, pear-shaped with black hair, always neatly combed, even during sex, I knew she wasn't trying to say, I'm her Brad Pitt. I seized up immediately and got off her. I didn't like being on top anyway. She had one of those sunbeam light bulbs overhead that felt as though it were burning the hair off my head. Why did you stop? She asked. You were imagining that Brad Pitt was on top of you. She pulled the covers over her chest and sat up. Last week during sex, you called me Eliza, your first wife's name. And the week before that, with your eyes closed, in the middle of an orgasm, you shouted, Queen Bey. And then on another evening, you whispered, sing for me, Tay-Tay. I could go on. Enough, I said, lying on my back in the memory foam. Who was I to her, and who was she to me? Were we only the vehicles of each other's fantasies? What would happen if I imagined making love to Odalise while making love to Odalise? Not sure I really wanted to know. I touched her body and she touched my face. I whispered in her ear, Khaleesi, wrenching her to me. As she rose, she pretended to shake free a shower of silver blonde hair. Her voice grew louder, more forceful, issuing commands in her native language, Dracarys, her dragons flying, breathing fire. And I'm going to finish with a short piece. Thank you. A big mistake. That's a big mistake, Janine says, but I do it anyway. She laughs. You never learn, she says. What's one more mistake, I answer, and why is it big? True enough, she said. You've made even worse mistakes, and some might even be considered monumental. I'm wondering which mistake she considers monumental and why she is with me, but I'm afraid to ask. Maybe my mistakes are not really mistakes, but simply choices leading to a greater good. To think so, she says, touching my cheek with her hand, would be a big mistake. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Those were really a beautiful mixture that you have of poetic voice, that poignancy, but also quirky and absurd and funny. So thank you always for being here with us tonight. You're always a wonderful reader, and nice to have you. Jeff Friedman. Next, we're going to hear from someone else who's new to the FBOMB. Avitus B. Carle, she, her, lives and writes outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Her stories have been published in a variety of places, including Fractured Lit, JMWW, Necessary Fiction, SoFlo Pojo, and elsewhere. Her debut flash fiction collection, These Worn Bodies, was published by Moon City Press. She can be found at avitusbcarle.com or online everywhere at Avitus B. Carle. Avitus B. Carle.
Thank you. And don't worry about the title. I know a lot of the social media websites try to make it warm or worn or something like that, but it is worn. And this is my debut flash fiction collection, winner of the 2023 Moon City Press Award, These Worn Bodies. And there's the link in case you want to order a copy. I'll be reading two stories from the collection, one exclusive for the collection and one that was published in SoFlo Pojo. And this first one is exclusive for the collection. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Apparently I don't write happy romance stories. So, oops, I guess something for me to work on. Here is kind of a love story, but on the back end of it, where it's more of the breakup. And it's called, Is This Really How It Happens? You cheated, then I cheated. I tried to cheat, lips puckered behind the bleachers with Levi Patterson, but then I thought, is this really how it happened? I started thinking about you. I didn't want to. I couldn't help it. I started thinking about you and Hazel from Chem, unless you also kissed Hazel from Band. Did you? How many friends do you have? I started thinking about you and whichever Hazel with your tongues in each other's mouths, hoping your braces cut her tongue. And I'm about to kiss Levi, knowing you kissed Hazel in the janitor's closet while I waited for you to go to lunch, thinking, is this whole kissing thing really supposed to be so easy? I didn't kiss Levi. I wish I did. I wish I wanted to. I thought I might have liked to, especially since he seemed interested in me. Not like how you used to be, always trying to hold my hand in secret under the table. I can tell Levi thinks a lot about what he wants to say before he actually gains the courage to talk to anyone. He always notices when I'm wearing a new dress, and we both have a love for Converse and Animaniacs. I thought those things might have made us kiss compatible. He shrugged when I changed my mind and left me because I guess I'm just that forgettable or leavable or whatever. Unlike you and the Hazels. Did she cut herself on your braces? I did. the first time we kissed and you were so worried, afraid you ruined the whole thing. Why weren't you afraid this time? I'm afraid. Not of you, definitely not of Hazel. To never be kissed again. To never have someone to worry about me again. I gave you my heart, and you cheated. And Levi just shrugged and walked away. And it's not fair that it's so easy for both of you and for Hazel, because I love you, and I want this to be hard for you too. All right. And the second one, thank you, is to all the boys we never kissed, which was in So Flo Pojo on the opposite end of the kissing spectrum. What we had was never love. Affection, infatuation, lust. We are of an age where we can distinguish among them all, just as we know the ways our lips can part, not for you, but for them. For the boys we tried to love and those we did. For our husbands and lovers and boyfriends. Don't be sad. We remember you fondly. The boys with the puckered lips while we leaned away. You who had the courage to be honest, say, I like you. Or maybe I could be that guy, whispered on porch steps. As we pumped our legs on the swing set, our velocities never sinking, spoken after we shared our misunderstandings of relationships and situationships and friends with benefitships and believing we were the girlfriend when really we weren't. You who listened to us, and we laughed when you told us you loved us, like your honesty was a joke. And we playfully punched your arms, slipped you into the friend zone as easily as we do with loose change into tip jars at our favorite coffee shops, unaware we couldn't afford to lose you. We are selfish in our ways of needing, selfish in our wanting, and yes, we should have let you go. Should have been happy when you found someone who wants to be kissed by you instead of wondering why you stopped returning our calls or became busy with plans that no longer involved us. Why you hesitate to hug us. Why you say, sorry, we can't do that anymore. Like spending the day together or linking arms in public, or you holding us as we cry about the guys we've hated to love is the problem when we know the person you text when you think we can't see, they are the problem. Some of us learn how to be happy for you, for this new person you want to kiss, but some of us grow into our jealousy. We lurk in the virtual crevices of your social media feeds and wonder what do you see in our replacement? How their hips are too wide and their laugh is too loud, and we'll remind you that clearly they're fake because no one is ever that happy. And we won't tell you we dream about plucking the hairs from their scalp, their unibrow, their mustache, their armpits, their legs, and imagine the moment you return to us and tell us how our replacement has changed, how you barely recognize them, and we'll tell you we know and that we understand. And you'll return to those of us who don't understand that you deserve to be happy, blinded by our love for you as a weapon wielded against the boys we've loved and wanted to kiss. You on our arm as we pass them by, pretending they are strangers to us, until we turn the corner and you ask what's wrong, unaware even after all this time that when we look at you, we are using you to look to the boys we've kissed to see if they've noticed how happy, carefree, and unbothered we seem, if in the way their body moves when they walk farther away from us, if their eyes still search for us, if we've proven to the boys we've kissed that we will always have other options, to prove that if we are still good enough for you, surely we are good enough to be loved. Thank you.
Thank you, Avitus. Your stories, people were mentioning this in the chat, what a strong voice you have.
Thank you.
It's this amazing combination of effortlessness, like it just flows. It's so easy, like you're just listening to someone like over coffee, but at the same time we hear the structure, the structure, the detail, the voice, like the attention to, like, so it's not just happening, but it is. So it's beautiful, wonderful. And I wanted to also say that the Moon City is not, like, that's no small thing to have won that, because I know that's very, very competitive. So congratulations, really,
Thank
and good
you.
luck with your book. And I just also want to say that I met Avitus at AWP
Hmm.
2 years ago. We were on a panel, like my bucket list. I was on an AWP panel, and it was about writing humor for Flash. And one of the panelists got COVID, and so Avitus jumped in at the last minute, gave the most kick-ass presentation. I can't even tell you how good it was. I was in awe. And I said to her afterwards, well, when did you find out you were doing this? And she said, Tuesday. Now, this was Thursday. So I was like, oh my God. So amazing, Avitus, really. So very nice work. And thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for
Appreciate having
having
you.
me.
Avitus B. Carle. Okay, next we're going, and we're coming to the end here, folks. We have just a few more readers. Bill Merklee has a chapbook and a novella in Flash making the rounds on the rejection circuit. When he's not writing, he's wondering, what the hell happened to this country? That's really not that funny. Bill Merklee.
Thank you, Francine, and thanks for the invitation. I found it really hard to work lately. I can't imagine why. So I went through notebooks and dug up this one from a workshop I took with Kathy Fish. So it's still a work in progress. And it's called Green Eyes. The homesickness didn't last long. Cousin Conrad was Andy's age, cousin Alarice a year younger. Thankfully, their English was better than his 2 years of high school German. The thing that finally put him at ease? Finding a McDonald's in Nuremberg. Those fries just tasted like home. The second day of Andy's stay, Alarice kissed him, like he was her boyfriend. This didn't faze Conrad in the least, but it was clearly something to hide from their parents. On the third day, Andy's Uncle Jurgen asked him what he liked to drink, as in alcohol. The most Andy had had to drink up to then was a shot of blackberry brandy his father had given him to settle a bout of diarrhea. It had worked, and it had also made Andy brave enough to make his dad listen to side one of Led Zeppelin II. Andy gave Uncle Jurgen the most American answer he could think of: whiskey. The next day, Andy was presented with a handle of 12-year-old Philadelphia. Conrad looked like they'd just hit the lottery. It was different here. No nude beaches or anything, but different enough for Andy to turn his back on 17 awkward years. He could sleep late. Everywhere he went, relatives gave him spending money. He drank whiskey and Coke. This was a chance to write his story, instead of reciting the one that had been written for him. And the way he and Alarice were making out, he felt like he actually had a girlfriend. At the end of the second week, Andy and his cousins dropped in on Conrad's friend Tomas. A dozen people were gathered around a table for a very basic drinking game. 10 glasses were lined up, most with various liquors, a couple with just water or soda. For each glass, everyone took a turn rolling a pair of dice. Low number down the contents. Small amounts at first, then every round after saw the glasses filled a little higher. Andy was done by the third one. The apartment glowed with red light filtered through a cigarette haze. Andy found most of the music strange, some of it pretty harsh. He couldn't decide if whatever was heating up in the oven smelled appetizing or not. Everyone at the table was having an intense discussion now, but had reverted to German, and Andy could barely follow it. He ambled to the sofa near the front windows. At the table, some guy named Costa had his arm draped around Alarice. She smiled and moved it off her shoulder. Conrad looked at Andy as if to say what Andy already knew. Don't do anything. Bleary-eyed, Andy started to look around the room to distract himself. There were things on the side table that said Tomas might be some kind of biker. A wallet attached to a heavy chain, a pair of leather gloves, and what looked like a small hunting knife. Back at the table, Costa was playing with Alarice's hair. Andy picked up the knife, slipped it out of its sheath, and weighed it in his hand. Acid rose in his throat. Costa was whispering in Alarice's ear. She leaned away, still smiling. Andy felt cold. His legs were shaking. He closed his eyes, and the room went quiet. When he opened them, everyone was staring at him. Conrad was on his feet, speaking in urgent German. Andy looked down and saw blood on the carpet between his feet. He had wrapped his left hand around the blade and squeezed the cutting edge into his palm. He felt like he would vomit, tried to apologize in German. Conrad grabbed his arm and took the knife, walked him into the bathroom. When Andy finished throwing up, Conrad and Tomas sat him down and wrapped his hand in gauze. Andy tried again to apologize. Tomas just laughed and said it was okay. Andy and his cousins staggered back home, taking a shortcut through a small farm, rustling through stalks of green young corn in the damp night air. Alarice held Andy's good hand. He wondered just whose hand she was holding. Thank you.
Wow. Excellent storytelling there, Bill. We really you just had us hanging on. What was going to happen? Excellent. Thank you so much for being here, Bill
Thank you.
Merklee. Bill Merklee, thank you. Next, we're going to hear from Elizabeth Coffey, who is the co-editor of Coolest American Stories, and I'm sure she will be telling us about that, and Mark, the last reader, will be too. She dabbled in poetry in the 90s and published in several small magazines, and her first novel was a finalist for the Claymore Prize, an award-winning book designer who has designed the books of 2 presidents of the U.S., by the way, 1 First Lady, many famous chefs, and uncountable best-selling novelists. She's director of design at Random House. Elizabeth Coffey.
Thanks, Francine, and thanks for this chance to read. I wasn't going to speak about Coolest American Stories. Mark and I are co-editors. Mark is the founder. Here's and publishers. Yes, here's Coolest American 2025. And Mark will probably tell you a little bit more about that. I'm going to read tonight from a novel that I just started working on. There's not a love theme. This is just the portion of the novel that I'm ready to share, and I'm really thrilled to have the opportunity to have an audience for something at this stage of my process. So thanks for listening. This is a mystery about 3 cousins who spent every summer growing up together, but who now haven't seen each other for 15 years. There's Andy, tragically scarred from a car accident. Willow, Andy's older, hard-partying cousin who's in the hospital again and this time might not make it. And Chloe, the youngest cousin, who died in a lake 15 years ago and whose killer has never been found. Every court had a match going. Andy visored her eyes with her hand and searched for the faces from the photos she'd seen in Hannah's room. But there wasn't anyone under 60, much less young enough to have been one of Hannah's friends. Then she spotted Reese. He was on the sideline, spinning his racket for the benefit of a wisp of a girl who couldn't have been more than 11. Asshole, Andy said, quietly enough. She bit her lip hard, and the girl headed toward the concession stand with a little skip in her step. For a second, Andy contemplated following her. Instead, she approached Reese. He watched the girl flit away, which gave Andy a chance to take a closer look at him. His hair was thinning, his tan store-bought. The watch on his wrist looked expensive enough to feed a small island nation for a week. She said, "She's a little young, even for you." He cocked his head, gave Andy one of those "do I know you" half smiles that reserves judgment in case you were someone who mattered. The smile was quickly replaced by a dismissive scowl that suggested he didn't recognize Andy in the least. She turned her cheek so that her left cheek faced him. "Andy," he said, "long time. I'd be happy to play you next." "Fuck you, Reese." Not exactly the speech she'd practiced in her head nearly every night since that summer 15 years ago, but it summed it up. She had the urge to kick him, shatter his balls and his thick white teeth, but she remembered she wasn't there for herself. And who was she kidding anyway? No, she didn't want to kick him. She wanted to kill him. "Let me guess," he said. "Willow put you up to this." Andy let out a silent exhale, hoping to tamp down her anger enough that her voice wouldn't crack. "Someone sold Hannah those drugs," she said. Her voice sounded strange to her ears, low-pitched and gravelly, but it hadn't faltered. "Maybe not you," she continued, "but someone you know." "How would I know?" She forced herself to look him square in the eyes. "Hanging out in that under 18 set, you're bound to hear something." He held Andy's stare. "I only give lessons one morning a week," he said, "and not once with Hannah. I'm sorry about what happened to her, but I told Willow the God's honest truth. I never heard anything, never saw anything. I don't know shit about it." Andy hated to admit it, but she believed him. And then it just came out. "You raped me, you son of a bitch." He took a step back. "Raped you? You couldn't get in my car fast enough." "I told you no," she said with composure she didn't know she possessed. "You held me down." He barked out something like a laugh. "I did you a favor. No one else was going to fuck you with a face like that." He waited to see how his words had landed. Satisfied, he turned to leave, and she noticed that the knuckles of his hand gripping his racket were white. "What about the ecstasy, Reese?" she called to his back. He stopped, pivoted, aimed his signature smirk at her. "Hannah took diet pills." "Not Hannah," Andy said. "Chloe." A pause. Then, "I didn't have anything to do with that." "What time did you get home that night?" "I didn't go out that night. I was home the entire time, just like I told the police." "Oh yeah? I talked to Josh, your old roommate. What if I told you he said you didn't get home that night until 10:30? "I don't know what you're talking about. I think you were with Chloe." "I think you like to say that to make yourself feel better. You knew I was seeing Chloe, so you told yourself I raped you so you wouldn't have to feel guilty about fucking your cousin's boyfriend." Her boyfriend? The grip on his tennis racket whitened again. "It wasn't anything. She liked me, that's all. It wasn't a thing." "It sounds like it was a thing." "Don't go putting words in my mouth. You know exactly what I meant." "So then who shot Chloe, Reese?" "I don't know," he said so loudly the woman in the next court bobbled her serve. "Who shot Chloe?" Andy asked again, matching his volume. She didn't care if the woman heard. She didn't care if the whole damn club heard. Reese lowered his voice to a whisper. "I don't know." Then he waved to the woman in the next court. "Toss it a little higher," he called, lofting an imaginary tennis ball into the air. "It's all in the follow-through." The woman nodded, smiled, tried to serve more fluidly, and Reese flashed her a thumbs up and jogged off. Andy watched the back of his legs, then the back of his head, until he disappeared into the men's locker room. Maybe he didn't know who shot Chloe, but he had been with Chloe that night. Andy was sure of it. She would have bet her life on it. Thank you.
Wow, that was really very compelling, Elizabeth. I really I want to keep reading that. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for being with us tonight. Also new to the FBOMB, Elizabeth Coffey. Thank you for being here. Our final reader tonight is Mark Wish, who is sharing the screen there. Mark Wish's published novels have been praised by the Los Angeles Times, Washington Post, Delia Ephron, Daniel Woodrell, Rebecca Mackay, and Salman Rushdie. Best American Short Stories published a story of his, and another of his stories won a Pushcart Prize. He publishes and edits Coolest American Stories with his wife, who we just met, Elizabeth Coffey. Mark.
Thank you. Thank you, Francine. Thank you, everyone, for being here and hanging out this long on Valentine's. I wanna mention Coolest American Stories 2025, not only because Elizabeth and I published and edited, and we would love for you to buy a copy, but mostly because the final story, and we saved the best for the last, was written by Francine Witte, our gracious host. And I just got an email the other day, Francine, from somebody telling me that they felt that your story should have been the lead-off story. And because it's, well, folks, it's hilarious, it's snappy, it's funny, it's smart, it's just everything. It's not Flash. I know a lot of you are into Flash, but for those of you who do read traditional length short stories, it just checks off all the boxes. And we're very tough. We only publish 13 stories a year. We just do one of these volumes every year. And it's, we kind of saved the best for the end, I guess you could say, but people are loving this story, and I think you folks would love it as well. And we invite you to, by the way, also, if you're interested in writing full-length short stories yourself and submitting to us, we'll be reading again starting on, what did we say, April 10th. We'll be opening submittable again for Coolest American Stories 2026. So we invite you to submit.
Mark, what is the minimum word count?
I
Because
don't.
we're in sort of
What
kind
do
of
we say?
into word
We
count
say 3,500, but we really encourage people to, like, around 5,000 would be nice. Even, a lot higher is fine. 8,000 is fine. We tend to work with authors, and we tend to edit down a bit. So if you have something that's running long and you don't mind having editors work on it with you, please, by all means, send to us.
Thank you.
Oh, wait. What kind of stories are considered cool? A lot of people ask us that. And by the way, we're going to be at AWP, so come and say hi to us at the book fair there. Every year at AWP, somebody asks this very question many times. And we probably should have just called this most, oh, now I have my other book. We should have just called it Most Interesting American Short Stories, because that's really what we're about. We kind of equivocate cool and interesting. Our theory being that if something is interesting, a lot of people take note of it and experience it, and that creates kind of a commonality and a community. I mean, that's pretty what's my word for that? That's hoping for a lot, to suggest that just because something is interesting, we can all get along because we read it and we talk about it and liked it. But that's kind of our theory, that, well, it's kind of, we just, you watch the Super Bowl, and a lot of people, or some event like that, a lot of people kind of come together when they're all interested in the same thing. And so our theory is, if we could make short stories more appealing to more people, not just writers of short stories, but even readers out there in general, readers across the country, readers who aren't necessarily very well educated, et cetera, et cetera. We thought that would be cool. So that's how we define it.
in any case, I'm going to read from the novel of mine that came out about a year ago. It's called Necessary Deeds. This one took a while to come out. I guess we don't need to get into that. You might kind of get an idea a little bit about why that was as you listen to what it's about. The premise of this novel is writers, particularly novelists in Manhattan, are getting killed. More than one of them, and NYPD can't find the killer, and the FBI is on the case now. And the premises of the whole novel is it's a mystery. It's a mystery thriller, and the premise is that this narrator is going to be released from Sing Sing for a crime of passion, where he was for a crime of passion, in order to go undercover to help the FBI investigate and try to find out who the killer is. So here we go. From Necessary Deeds. Here in Sing Sing, the killers I've met are better storytellers than most of the novelists I've represented. They'll bombard you with twists and turns about how they were ambushed and shackled and prosecuted harshly despite their innocence, and you'll find yourself nodding, buying their horror stories. To be fair, though, I should probably admit that I'm naturally more inclined to suspend disbelief for these guys, my fellow inmates, because of my need to get along with them. After all, for years now, I've wanted to prove to Warden Scardina that the stint of fury in which I myself killed a human being was a singular incident in an otherwise placid life. I mean, I'm trying to convince him I deserve an early release, or at least inclusion on the list of exemplary inmates whose hours in the yard have been tripled. In fact, I'm out there in the yard when I first meet Jonas, on the unshaded basketball court, where my mood often spikes if direct sunshine finds me, using the hoop with no net and therefore alone, sometimes lost in thought about my victim, sometimes imagining him putting his first move on my ex. In any case, vulnerable to the whims of anyone who has the nerve to approach me. And Jonas indeed has the nerve. As he crosses the out-of-bounds line, all I know about him, well, all I've heard about him since he arrived here yesterday, is that he too has killed a man, in his case during a flubbed attempt to rob the Mayopac OTB while partnering up with a defective AR-15. This hoop yours is how he starts with me. Usually. You play in school? I hoist up a shot that proves to be a brick. Just out here for the vitamin D. He folds his arms, studies me up and down. To imply I fear no one, I reciprocate. I see a gaunt, slightly hunched, yet taut fellow, 10 years younger than I and 6 inches taller. I see a clean-shaven horse face, a weak yet cleft chin. Green eyes that squint a little through black horn rims, a full head of brown hair with gray coming in barely and on the sides only. Mine, by the way, went completely white during my first 5 months here. How long you in for? I ask. Would rather not discuss that. I pass him the ball, which he bobbles. He does not shoot. My guess is he doesn't give a shit about hoop either. Would rather hear what you know about Ethan Hendy, he says. Ethan Hendy was a client of mine who, 18 years ago, that is, more than a decade before I learned my wife wasn't exactly a saint, gave up on writing novels to write poems that appear in those photocopied literary magazines no one reads. He's a hell of a writer, candid and interesting and succinct as anyone published. But I have not survived here by not holding cards close. So, Ethan Hendy. Ha! Why ha? Because I know you're Matthew Connell and that you've represented the poet Ethan Hendy for a long time. The only problem being, I don't know such a person. But see, bro, there's no question in my mind that you do know him. I know you've been his agent for years. I shake my head no. I the asphalt between us and the cyclone fence. You trying to tell me you're not Matthew Connell, he asks. Matt Connell. I force a sour expression. Maybe you're confusing me with some hoity-toity guy? Anyway, how does someone who hauls around an AR-15 know anything about poetry? He points at his horn rims. Because he's read some? Well, I don't know any Hindi. But see, Matt, I still think you do. Plus, I think that as his literary agent, you know what a badass he is. In all truth, I do not know this. The Ethan Hendy I represented before my arrest had a soul gentle as any. I'm curious about what this Jonas guy heard Hendy did, but to get an early release, I've pledged to myself never to talk about crime that's gone down on the outside. After all, a rehabbed convict no longer cares about crime, and I am nothing if not a rehabbed convict. To let this Jonas guy know I'm done socializing for the day, I turn and face the run of the Hudson beyond the chain link and the razor wire, its waves peeking into whitecaps here and there. So you're not going to spill, he asks. I don't as much as shrug. He zings me a no-look pass, really zips it, hard, straight at my head, but I notice it soon enough to catch it. You missed, I mutter, loud enough for him to hear, and I look over to steer him down, but his back is already turned, a confident stride taking him off. And it occurs to me as he heads to the guarded double doors between us and the inside that if he doesn't have 6 inches on me, he has 7. And that my own storied past has taught me that the strength to kill a man comes not only from size, it also comes from youth. Thank you.
Ooh, wow. Very strong story there, Mark. Thank you so much for coming tonight, Mark Wish. What a great night we had. Thank you to our readers, Andrea Marcusa, Gary Fincke, Don Tasaka Steffler, Jeff Harvey, Christine H. Chen, Jeff Friedman, Avitus B. Carle, Bill Merklee, Elizabeth Coffey, and Mark Wish. And it's been really wonderful sharing the Zoom room with you tonight. I'll be putting the recording up in a little while so you can listen to all this again. So thank you very much. And this is Francine Witte from the picture of the bookstore that I live in. And for FBOMB, Global Flash, good night and drive safely. Thank you. Bye now.